This is Travis Hazelton, everybody. This is the Travis Show. I'm here with Stefan Verstappen. He's a martial arts expert and some along the lines of what, 30 something years of experience in the field?
Going on 40 now.
Oh, wow. So, and then we're here to talk about martial arts weapons. We're going to start with the least good ones and then move on to the better ones. And we'll talk about the pros and cons and all of that. And I'll let Stefan start with it.
Okay, so this came about when I came back from China, and I was teaching at a karate school in Bolton. And we talked about this before because that's when I began changing the rules for when we sparred, and that was no rules. I decided that all this fight stops once you score a point and all this nonsense was really unrealistic. And so I began at that time with my students that when we sparred, there was no rules except for eye gouging and biting and that. But otherwise, no rules. You could take them down, and if you landed that on the ground, the fight continues. Unlike at that time, if you were taken off your feet, then the fight was automatically stopped and everybody got up and went to their corners. But I said, no, none of that. If you land on your butt, you keep fighting. And if you knocked your opponent down on the ground, go after him. Go and kick him in the head
Right.
while he's down because that's what would happen in real life. And so this was,
Yeah.
almost 20 years before mixed martial arts came around. But I was already doing that because, well, it just made sense. Like you can't I wanted to try and make it as realistic as possible because if I'm teaching you these techniques and you stop after you punch somebody one time, then in a real fight, you're going to be in trouble. The next logical step was to go to weapons. Now, I had learned quite a few weapons when I lived in China: the sword, the iron fan, the spear, the guandao, and a couple of others. And at the time, I was really interested. I really liked double sticks. I did some eskrima, and I loved
Yeah.
double stick fighting. It was great. So I wanted to see what would these karate, these martial arts weapons do? What could you do? Free form sparring. So up until this time, the only thing you did with a weapon was kata. So I learned a bunch of katas, and it was all very nice and that. But what I really wanted to do was see how can we fight with these weapons and what works and what doesn't work. So I first figured out that okay, we need some body armor because obviously we can't go naked against these weapons, and obviously also we weren't using steel swords or something like that, but a 3.5 foot stick or a shinai that will substitute for a steel sword. But
Right.
even using a shinai, you need some kind of body armor. I looked into the kendo body armor, but it was really expensive. So, at that time it was like $400 for one suit, and you needed two suits. I didn't have that money, so
Right.
I began experimenting, and so the first thing I tried was motorcycle helmets, hockey chest protectors, and hockey gloves. Well, this was a disaster on a number of levels. First of all, the sticks we were using were maple sticks, maple and oak sticks. And even with a motorcycle helmet, you get whacked on the head with a maple stick, man, it rings your bell. And it would have broken the motorcycle helmet anyways after a few hits. Also, the
Yeah. It's still going to move your brain around. So,
oh yeah, yeah, and the noise, it just deafens you because the noise was really loud inside the motorcycle helmet, even with the padding. And also the hockey chest protectors, or the goalie chest protectors, or the motocross chest protectors. They were like a hard plastic, and it really interfered with your movement. So that's another thing when you see people fighting in full armor and wearing helmets. Also, the motorcycle helmet really cut down on your visibility. Your peripheral vision is gone. You can't see peripheral vision. And but the worst thing of all was the hockey gloves. I mean, you do not get a feel for the weapon in your hand wearing hockey gloves. You can't spin the weapon. You can't manipulate it very well. So I started experimenting, and I came up. We then we turned to the weapons. Okay, let's make the weapons lighter. So the first thing I did was made weapons out of PVC tubing. Okay, so that was nice and light, but very oftentimes the PVC tubing, we would, you'd hit the guy on the head or something like that, and it would break. And
Yes.
when it would break, it would be sharp shards. If you were freeform sparring and that weapon broke and you still used it, you could kill somebody because it was like a pointy stick now, and so they broke too easy. Okay, so now I went to the other type of plastic. The kind of plastic, I don't know what it's called. It's not PVC, but it's the kind that they make those practice nunchucks out of, right? Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the practice nunchucks, they got a foam coating and it's around kind of a plastic tube. So I used those plastic tubes, but that didn't work either because they were so floppy. If I try to, if I'm using that as a stick, a 2.5 foot stick, and I block my opponent's stick, now I want to be able to whip that stick around and redirect it and guide it. But with this floppy plastic, it would just bend. So I couldn't even disarm the guy. So finally, I settled on rattan. Rattan was the best. It was light. It was still pretty strong, and it wouldn't bend. I never broke a rattan stick ever. But even if you
No,
did
it's
break
so
it,
tough.
yeah, it's so tough. So I never broke a rattan. Okay, so a rattan. But even still, the rattan was still, yeah, you get whacked with that. It'll leave a welt. So then I put foam, the what do we use for a pipe insulation,
Oh,
right?
pipe insulation. You're doing exactly what we did, what we ended up doing. Like we made the same progression in attempts to figure out the weapons when I was doing like HEMA and stuff. So yeah, keep going.
Okay, so we put the pipe insulation around the rattan sticks and then duct tape. Even still, it was, it still whacked you hard. So you needed a helmet, but we swapped out the motorcycle helmet, which was too heavy, for a goalie helmet. And then I created some body armor. I made it myself because I'm, me, I'm very creative and talented. And I
Mhm.
made it out of foam, the kind of bed roll foam that the yoga guys use.
Right.
It's like what is it? 3/8 of an inch foam, and again, vinyl plastic, the kind that you could buy in the wintertime, that rolled up and you use it as a toboggan to go down the hills.
Okay.
Yeah. So I made the body armor from out of that, and that worked really good because it also was flexible. So, if you did have to bend over at the waist, unlike the motorcycle motocross chest protector, this thing wouldn't dig into your belly or into your ribs. And then the final puzzle was to make the proper type of gloves because it was really essential to get a good feel for the weapon. And so I came up with this design, and it's hard to describe, but it worked perfectly. It looked like an armadillo, but the
Hmm.
inside was completely open. So there was only one lace that went around your index finger, and then one string that went across the palm. So your palms were completely open, but when you made a fist, the outside provided full protection. There was nothing exposed. Okay, so next was making the weapons. We had a rattan staff. We had a 4 foot stick or a Joe. We had
Hmm.
Eskrima sticks. They were like 24 inches long, two each for two partners, so we can both go two against two, two sticks against two sticks. Uh,
Yeah.
I made a tonfa. I made nunchucks and a manriki gusari and a 3 section staff and a meteor hammer. So over the next couple of years, I sparred all the students. We'd put on the gear, and this worked perfect. I mean, the other thing is, if the armor is too thick, you don't feel it when you get hit. You need to feel a little bit of pain when you get hit, or otherwise, we found this out because we put on the armor and then we used the really weak stuff, and you would whack the guy in the head and he wouldn't feel it, he wouldn't notice it, and he'd still come after you. Well, like in real life, I smacked you in the head with a maple rod, a maple stick, you're going to be on the ground. You wouldn't be still coming at
Right.
me, right? So, trying to find the perfect balance between realism in the handling of the weapon and also realism in that you will feel some pain when you get hit, or otherwise you don't know that you did something wrong, and
Right.
but still safe enough that you can go ahead and go full contact, go all out. And again, so I sparred with all my students, and again, no rules. You can use the weapon, but if you want to close the distance and take the guy down in a hip throw, then that's up to you. And if he's on the ground, you want to beat him with your stick, that's up to you. So, that worked very fine. And still using kicks and punches. You could do a cross block over your head against an overhead staff strike and then kick him in the stomach. That works very good. So after two
Yeah,
years,
sounds good.
yeah. So after 2 years, I got a pretty good idea of what all these weapons could do. We matched them all up against each other. Three section staff against double sticks against 4 foot staff, 4 foot staff against nunchucks or double nunchucks. Oh, and also a tonfa. Did I say tonfa? We also made a tonfa. Yeah,
Yeah.
a double tonfas against double nunchucks, and we just paired it all up. All the students sparred each other, and I sparred everybody as much as I could because I loved sparring with weapons. It was fun. So
Yeah.
after 2 years, I can tell you now, in my humble opinion, from full contact, free form, no rules, weapon sparring, which weapons were the best and which really sucked.
All right. Yeah, no, that sounds like pretty much very similar to what we went through. So I'm interested to see what you think, how you came, what you came to think they're the better ones and worse ones.
Okay, so let's start with the worst weapons. The worst weapon by far of all of them were the nunchucks. They were just f.
Agreed. They're fun,
Yeah,
but
listen. When you see the little kids, the 6-year-old at the karate tournament, and he's spinning it around behind his back and all that, it's adorable. It's cute. It's flashy. It looks great. It looks really great. But in actual sparring, they were useless. The nunchucks were like a one-trick pony, and it only worked against people that didn't know what a nunchuck was.
right, you see it, it's kind of scary. Maybe you're still gonna get dinged with it if you were gonna block it, 'cause it'll wrap around or whatever. But you know, yeah, it's just there's no control over it. It's not even hitting that hard. They
No.
found that out on a show called Ultimate Warrior, I think it was something like that,
Oh
and it
yeah.
was like they hit these ballistics gel dummies, and it took several, as where a baseball bat just took the top of the head right off.
Right. Yeah. No, nunchucks were useless. Like the one-trick pony is the standard trick that everybody sees with a nunchuck is you stick it under your arm and then you whip it out really fast, right?
Right.
And strike with it. But everybody already knew what that trick was because we were all martial artists. We'd seen people using nunchucks before. So nobody ever got close enough to get whacked on the head with the damn nunchuck. And
Right.
also, we all had some other weapon, whatever weapon it was. Like I said, a staff or a tonfa or a stick and if you had another weapon, then you automatically had a greater range. Even the 24-inch Eskrima stick still had a greater range than the nunchuck. So what you could
Right.
do is you could whack the guy, and he would try to retaliate with with that one-trick pony whipping that nunchuck around. But most of the time he was short. He couldn't even reach you with the damn thing. I never saw the nunchuck wrap around another guy's weapon.
And it's such a big maybe, and it would be anytime I had it happen to me, it was like it was a little ding,
Yeah.
you know. It wasn't a big deal, and
Yeah.
that was a big three-piece nunchuck, you know, like the three-piece as long as a bow staff. That was one of those,
Oh yeah. No, that was
and
a
and it
three
still
sectional
was
staff.
like just kind of dinged me upside the head, and it wasn't that big a deal,
Yeah.
you know. I had a sword.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So against a sword or a stick or a Joe or a shinai or whatever,
Right.
they were useless. There was only occasionally one technique that worked with the nunchuck, and that is If you held it in two hands with the chain link in the middle, and if you were to block, say, a staff attack, and then you would wrap the nunchuck around the end of the staff or around the length of the staff so that you would trap it. It happened maybe once or twice against people that didn't know what they were doing with the staff, and that a guy was able to wrap that nunchuck, and then, well, what you'd have to do is go right into a side kick, right? So let's say
Right.
somebody comes at you overhead attack with a staff, and you using the nunchuck, you blocked it, and then immediately wrapped the chain around the staff so he couldn't pull the staff back, and you trapped it. But now, what do you do to attack him? Well, you turn to the side, you parry the staff out of your way, and then you either roundhouse kick him or you side kick him. That was the best technique.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? So you
Yes.
block and you immediately turn for a side kick. Well, you could do a front kick, but because they're holding a staff, they're probably a little bit too far away for a front
Yeah, you're
snap.
probably getting the best range out of like a Taekwondo style roundhouse or a
Exactly.
side kick.
Yeah,
Yes.
roundhouse kick to the head or side kick to the stomach. So those were the only two techniques that the nunchuck was good at. And anybody that was even familiar with any of the other weapons would always beat the guy with the nunchuck. Even if the guy
Right.
with the nunchuck was a black belt and the guy with the staff was a green belt still. So, number one,
Yeah.
worst weapon in the world, nunchucks.
So, if you don't mind me asking, do you think that there's any truth to it having been a modified farm tool in the for the Okinawans, or is that just a trope?
I think there is some truth to that because there's another medieval weapon called a flail.
Right.
And that was definitely a farm tool. That was to, whack the wheat. Um,
Right.
and so,
That's what I wondered. Is it's like, all right, you can learn how to use your everyday objects like that they were dealing with because they were under oppression from Japan, right?
yeah,
You know, to defend themselves a little bit, and maybe the nunchucks are concealable. I'd still probably rather use just any other random stick though, like or pole or something.
yeah. The only benefit I could see is that with the nunchucks, it's concealable. Whereas with a stick, you got the stick. But yeah, I would rather use a stick. Absolutely, just pick up anything you can find in the forest would be better than a nunchuck. The flail, the European flail, that was a 2 foot stick on the end of a chain on the end of a 5 foot staff. You had some range with that, and but again, it doesn't really generate a lot of force that flying little piece of wood. It doesn't. It's not bone crushing. And if you're wearing armor, I don't know how those things would ever stand up against an
Oh no,
armored
you'd
knight.
laugh at that thing,
Yeah,
I think.
exactly. You'd laugh at that thing. The only other thing I can think of to use a nunchuck for is if you snuck up on somebody from behind and wrapped it around his throat.
Yeah, and get those carotid arteries closed
Ex-
off pretty
exactly.
easily. Yeah.
Yeah, you could cut off the carotid arteries and he would pass out. So it'd be like a sleeper hold. And so, okay, so let's say there's three techniques you can do with a nunchuck.
Yeah, and so many of those are easily substituted, but just knowing how to do like something else.
Exactly.
You know, so
Exactly.
nunchucks are out. They're
Yeah.
fun, but they're out.
Yeah, they're fun. They look flashy. I like them.
I got two training pairs upstairs, and me and my boy will run around the house and smack each other with them, just like a Nerf battle, but with nunchucks. But that's all it is it's fun.
It's a
I don't
toy.
even keep my real ones anymore.
Yeah, I just read a release by the um, Canadian Firearms Office listing weapons that are illegal in Canada, and yeah, that's top of the list there.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next worst weapon is, and I've heard this from police officers because they were issued these stupid weapons back in the 80s, and that is a tonfa.
Hmm.
So if you hold a tonfa by the short piece that sticks out at a 90-degree angle, and you try to use it as a block with the long section next to your forearm, um,
Yes.
okay, you have no range holding it in that position. So the next technique then is to whip it around.
Right.
And again, just like the nunchuck, the thing has no
It's just
power.
sliding in your hand and flops right off. The thing I had an issue with trying to block that way was it's a round surface
Yes,
on your wrist, which is a round surface.
yeah,
So it would still deflect off of your own forearm.
absolutely.
I
That's the
think
other
the
thing.
flat ones, there are for varieties, might have worked better for that,
Yeah,
but
there's
I don't
there's
know.
kind of sort of yeah, they got curved edges, but they're basically square, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that might work a little bit better, but yeah, blocking with the round end and all that. Most of the time, that round piece would just kind of slide down your forearm anyway, so you're still blocking with your arm. It's really not offering you a lot of protection. And then to
right.
use it, with that whipping action, whereby you loosen your grip on it a little bit, or otherwise you can't swing it around. And so you have to loosen your grip and let it whip around in your hand, and then it comes around. But again, there's no force behind it at all. Nothing. Yeah, tonfa is useless. Slightly better than a nunchuck. The only time the tonfa was useful is if you grip it by the other end, so that that
Oh, yes.
so that that little 90-degree angle piece acts sort of like a hilt. So now you can block it, and you can block attacks, and that 90-degree piece would, prevent your knuckles from getting busted if somebody's using a stick or a staff. But then again, basically you're back to a stick. So the whole
Yes.
the whole design
And
feat,
I've seen some cops be pretty effective in controlling somebody, holding it on the other end, from what you're saying,
yeah,
where that 90-degree piece is out on the other end, but they're driving that thing into your throat. And what you're doing is you're just controlling a person. That's not exactly a self-defense thing. That's I'm impending my will on you against
yeah,
your will.
yeah. Well, listen, you can do the same thing with a big lighter, for crying out loud.
Sure.
Hold that in your fist and dig the end into somebody's nerve cluster, and yeah, but for some reason, all the cops, because it looks like a martial arts weapon, from the movies. Again, we're talking about free form sparring, no rules, completely useless. As a restraining technique, if you're an officer, if you want to dig the end of that into somebody's neck and
Yeah.
all that, okay, that's different. But you're not free form sparring somebody else that also has a weapon, right?
Yes.
Tonfa, the second worst weapon, slightly better than a nunchuck, but basically it's just a short stick, and then just get a short stick. Certainly never grab it by that 90-degree angle. Okay, so then we
Yes.
had a Manriki Gusari.
One I don't know if I know. I might have seen it, but
You've
that
seen it.
I don't
I'll tell you
recognize the
what it
name.
is. A Manriki Gusari is a scythe, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
right,
I
it's a
think we call those commas in mainstream.
yeah, commas, right? So it's a comma,
Okay.
but the difference between an ordinary comma and a Manriki Gusari is that the latter has a chain attached to the bottom of the handle, about a 6 foot chain, and at the end of the chain is a pretty heavy weight. So you hold the comma in one hand, you got the chain in front of you, and you're using the other end of the chain, and you're using that as like a whip, right? So
Yes.
the
Kind
I
of like those shogi ninja weapons.
that's right. It's one of those ninja weapons. You see that in those ninja movies.
Yes.
It's still better than a tonfa, and it's still better than a nunchaku. The thing is that the whip end of that chain actually can be pretty effective, because you've got a little bit of range now, right? You got a 6 foot chain on the end of it. So if you're up even against a long staff, you can still hit the other guy and he can hit you, but you can still hit him.
Right.
And that chain does wrap around the weapons. If they're just holding their weapon up, like in a guard position, and you
Hmm.
whip that chain out, it'll wrap around the weapon pretty good. And then you can pull that weapon, and if the guy's not holding on tight, which was a big mistake everybody made the first couple of times they sparred, is they didn't hold on to their weapons tight, and everybody lost their weapon in the first 2 minutes freeform sparring, right?
Right.
So the key to weapons fighting is hang on to the damn weapon. So they wouldn't hang on to it, and you could wrap it around their stick or their shinai or their staff, and you could actually pull it out of their hands and then just beat them with the other end, right? with the comma
Right.
end. So that actually wasn't too bad.
But that takes some pretty specialized skill in that weapon.
But that's
Most
the
people can't
problem.
pick it up and use it that way.
Yeah, it does take specialized skill. And then holding it with the chain in the middle also is was good for blocking. So again, the same idea like with the nunchucks, if somebody came at you with an overhead strike, you could use that chain to block, and then you could wrap that chain around the weapon and entangle it, and then use the comma end again to beat him with it. So the Manrika Gusari, no, Manriki Gusari, that's, I think I'm getting the name wrong. I think Manriki Gusari is just a double ended chain, double weighted chain. Yeah. My mistake. I forget the name of
Okay.
the comma with the with the weight and the chain on the end of it. Not
Is
bad.
it the Kusari Giri or something
Oh
like that?
yeah. That's why I was
I
Manriki Gusari,
okay.
and this is a Gusari Giri. Yeah, something like that. I think you're right. But that wasn't too bad. So third worst weapon is the Gusari or the Kama with a chain on the end of it. Not bad, but again, people needed to know how to use that chain, and if you play with it all the time, right? You practice, you
Yeah.
play with it, you get pretty good at it. Coming up after that is the meteor hammer. Now, I liked the meteor hammer. I really did. I got really good with it. I played with it all the time. So, a meteor hammer is a 12-foot rope at the end of which is a pretty big weight. So, I had to
Mhm.
put a lot of padding on the end of that weight. It was like a brass ball. The trick to this, the way to use this is you tie the end of the rope around your left wrist, and then you hold the weapon in your right hand, and then you whip it around. Now, there's a couple of techniques that work pretty good. I used to do this in the kids' class. I was really mean to the kids, but they loved it. It was so much fun.
That'll be okay.
So they
I,
would,
I I throw kids and choke kids all the time.
yeah, yeah.
It doesn't sound good, but
I know it doesn't sound good, but they loved it. It was great. So, at the beginning of the kids' class, we would have them run around the dojo, right? As a
yeah.
warm up. But what I would do is I would take this meteor hammer and I would wave it around over my head like a lasso. And as the kids run by, I would drop down and let the weight and the rope at like ground level, right? Swing around at ground level. And the kids had to jump over it like a skipping rope. If they
Right.
didn't jump over it or they didn't jump over it fast enough, it would wrap around their feet and they would go flying onto their face. But
Nice.
we're on tatamis and no,
Yeah, you're on mats. They're kids,
they're
right? They
kids,
have those
yeah,
rubber bones.
yeah, and they were just laughing their asses off. But I'm telling you, you could take somebody off their feet in 2 seconds with this weapon. It worked really good. The two techniques that really worked good with the meteor hammer is whipping it around, and then now to get length, what you would do is because you've got 6 feet in your right hand, 6 feet of rope in your right hand, and you got 6 feet of rope between your right hand and your left hand. So you would whip it over your head, 6 foot, but then when you swung out at your opponent, you would let it go through your fingers. You're going to get blisters on your fingers because the rope will just burn the skin off you because it's sliding through your skin, right? And you bring your
Yeah.
left hand to your right hand to feed the rope out. So now you can stand back 12 feet, and people can't judge the distance of this weapon at first. After a few times facing it, people got the idea of what it can do, and then they didn't make the stupid mistakes that would get them smacked. But you're 6 feet away and you're 10 feet away and you're waving this over your head, and then suddenly you whip it out. It's now 12 feet long and it wraps around their legs, and you can pull them off their feet, or it wraps around their stick or their sword or their staff, and you can pull that out of their way. So that worked pretty good. I was shocked because I really didn't think this thing would work. Right? I liked it. It was fun because you're like Spider-Man. You're whipping, you're shooting
Right.
this web out, and
Yeah.
so you would whip it
And
out.
it's cool when you can work at a range and then also come up close too.
and
you
also
know.
come up close. So if you want to come up close, what you do is your left hand again pulls back the extra rope, and you got to let it slide through your fingers again until you've got 2 feet or 3 feet in your right hand, and now it's a short range weapon. So by manipulating your left hand, either going towards your right or pulling it back, you adjust the length at which this thing will work. And it worked pretty good, to be honest with you. Like I said, I was surprised that it worked as well as it did. The other technique that almost never failed, and that is I'm doing an upward swing. So I've got the right hand section with the weight, and I've pulled the rope back, so I've got like say 2.5 feet, and I'm
Mhm.
spinning it fast. I'm doing an upward spin on this, right?
Right.
So I'm spinning it fast on my right hand side, and I can turn my body diagonally or sideways to the opponent, and then spin this weight around. Now, at the last minute, you whip it forward, you release your fingers, you bring your left hand in, and this thing now comes into a straight line. I mean, it's straight, it's dead on, and you can get really accurate with it. If I wanted to hit you in the forehead or in the nose or in the throat or in the stomach, I could control it that well. The other version of this is a rope dart. So if you had like a heavy dagger on the end of it, and now we're talking, Mortal Kombat. What's his name?
Yeah.
That
Scorpion.
Scorpion.
Yeah.
Come
Get over
here.
here. Yeah.
So you're just like it worked just like that Scorpion technique in the video game. It
Yeah.
would whip straight out, and the thing is, most people have a very hard time defending against something that's coming straight at you. If you take a swing, you can see the arc of the weapon, right? It's making a big circle towards you. This thing is coming straight at you, and it's coming super fast. Even if you try to block it, it's probably too late because it's only like a 3-inch brass ball on the end of it. So it's like trying to hit a baseball sideways, right?
Yeah.
So even if you try to block it, all you're going to block is the rope, and that's not going to do anything. The rope will just flex away, but that ball is still coming straight towards you, and it will hit you. So with
You'd
the
have to slip it like a jab and still be hard to see it coming, like you said.
exactly, it's like a jab, but way faster than a jab because you're whipping it around, and then you,
Right.
you let it slide through your fingers. Your left hand comes in, gives you all 12 feet of rope, comes straight at you, boom, right in the head. I'm telling you, with the rope dart, I could hit everybody in the head the first 2, 3 times until they figured out
To
either
look for that.
to look for it and to duck it because there is a tell, like when you do decide to whip it out, there's a slight movement to the hand, right? It kind of the big swing kind of cuts short, and you kind of like almost like doing a palm up finger strike, right?
Right.
So, and then if you could spot when the guy would do that, then you still had a half second to duck under it, and or duck to the side, right, or evade it. You couldn't block it. Forget about blocking it. Even if you seen it coming, you couldn't block it, but you could duck and weave away from it. So that was, I guess, the fourth best weapon. Like I said, I was surprised that that thing actually worked as good as it does. And I think as a backup weapon, it's really great because it's very light, very portable. You can hide it, you can wrap it around your waist like a belt.
Really, you could probably make it real easy if you needed to. Throw something heavy, a horseshoe or something on the end of a rope.
Yeah, I think that Jackie Chan did that in one of the movies where he
Yeah,
grabbed the horseshoe on
that's
the end of
probably
it.
why it popped up into my head. But I'm sure there's other things too.
Yeah, I think it was a Jackie Chan movie, or it might have been a Jet Li movie, but he had a
It
whip or
was
something.
probably both, but it was Jackie Chan, Shanghai Noon.
Oh, is that right?
Was
Okay.
Yeah, pinnacle point of my adolescence was watching Jackie Chan do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm
so
just saying that you could probably do that with field expedient. Let me put it that field expedient resources could put that weapon together pretty easily.
yeah, absolutely. Grab 12 feet of rope, tie the end around a screwdriver, a wrench, you know,
Yeah,
something like that, a horseshoe, and it was yeah. And again, it worked pretty good. Worked pretty good, but it wasn't very flexible. You know, you can block with the middle section with the rope again. You know, you can block and entangle the person's weapon. But once you've blocked and entangled it, it was too awkward to try and whip that ball around again and try and hit somebody with it. So you're again same with the nunchuck. You can block and entangle it, but your counter strike is probably going to be a sidekick.
right.
So the next weapon is again one of my favorites, and that's the three section staff. So three
Nice.
24-inch sticks with chains between two of them, or three of them, right?
Yep, I had one and I knocked myself out with them with a set of those.
Because
Hit myself in the back of the head and was out like a light until my grandpa got home. I was doing
no,
that thing where you kind of spinning it around, like you
yep,
can do it with a bow staff or whatever. But if you get momentum on it, it's like, how do you stop?
yeah,
Until
yeah,
you learn how to stop, how do you stop? So I tried to stop, and it came up and spit me,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
You got to
hit me in the back of the head. Wasn't fun.
the one end has to go under your armpit, and then the other end you just have to slow it down
Yeah,
from the
I
spin.
learned it the hard way, and then a few years later, I gave him to my cousin.
Well, that's funny because I've always told people, I said, if you get into a fight and you have a three-section staff, your best technique would be to give your opponent the three-section staff
Yeah, it's
and let
probably
them knock
true.
themselves out with it. Spent a lot of time with the three-section staff. I played with it when I was in China. I had an aluminum one. It screwed together and it was a long staff, and then you unscrew it and it became a three-section staff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was very cool. So I would put it in my backpack, get on my motorcycle. I'd go up in the mountains. There was a little temple there in a bamboo forest, just like you see in that movie, uh, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon thing. It was
Yeah.
like, I trained up there, and I trained with that three-section staff. And yeah, sure, I hit myself on the head with it, but it was aluminum, so it was like really light, didn't hurt myself.
Mine were, I think, maple or something like that.
Well, I got
The
another set. I got
ball
th-
bearing chains.
Yeah, I got two other sets. One made from Dowling. That was better, So it was the Dowling one we used with no rattan with the foam. But I also have, and I still have them, made out of ironwood. And oh my, that thing weighs a ton.
That antique wood, ironwood. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's like teak. It's really solid.
Really hard,
Yeah,
really strong.
and heavy. This thing is heavy. So when you're doing that figure eight spin, wow, you got to hang on to it really great. But even more important is like if you're whipping it around over your head, the weight of that thing, you got to, you can't be whipping that around for too long. Your arm is going to get really tired. The,
Yes.
the thing with the three section staff is there are dozens and dozens of ways to use it. It's very complicated, but actually it's pretty good. But again, I played with that with the three section staff for like 2 or 3 years before I started sparring with it. So I'm familiar with it. So here's the best techniques with a three section staff. You hold one end in each hand close to the center section. So basically you've got double sticks, right? So it's just like Eskrima sticks. And
Yes.
and that the middle piece is you use that for blocking. So that was pretty good because you had that piece in the middle in front of your body all the time. So if they come with an overhead strike, you just you bring your wrists back and that middle section comes up and blocks it. If they come at you with a horizontal strike to the side, you just turn it sideways and you could block it that way. So that
Yeah.
middle section was pretty good. It was always there in the middle, and it a lot of times it would block people's attacks, even when you didn't mean to block it because they would just come at you. But that stick was there, and then you could use either end to counter strike, like an Eskrima stick. And also, if you block it, you can then press the opponent's weapon down or to the side or away from you using that centerpiece and still strike him with either one of those ends. So you can block and parry and counter strike almost in the same move. So that was pretty good. Then the other way to use it was to hold it by the center section and let one end come free and whip it around. So now you're back to like a giant nunchuck. And it
Right.
wasn't that
But
great,
since it's got some weight behind it and some range.
but at least it's got weight behind it and it does have range. So now you got like a 4 foot range with this thing. It's not bad. It worked pretty good. The other way to hold it is that you hold the outside pieces by their very ends, and you then have that middle section in front of you. So now you've got a box around you, right? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you're holding the outside edges of the sticks, and the centerpiece, the middle piece, is out in front of you, and it's like a box. I mean, you're protected on three sides. So if you're blocking, it's really easy. All you have to do is lift it up or lift it down, and it will block, horizontal and vertical strikes. So that was pretty good. And then you could block the strike, and you can still, if you pull one hand back and the other hand forward, one of those corners will whip over the top of your opponent's weapon, and you can still strike him with the end of the other stick, with the chain end of it, right? So you would be hitting him with the chain as well. So that didn't work too bad. That worked pretty good. The other technique would be to, again, holding it the same way on either end of the sticks. You bring it around behind your back, and then you whip it out full length. So now you've got 6.5 feet of 3 section staff, plus another 2.5 feet for the length of your arm. So now you got 8 feet. So
Yeah.
anybody with a staff or a spear or something like that, you can hit them and they can't hit you. Yeah, I managed to ding people with that technique, right? So you would hold it in front of you, and they would come at you with an attack, let's say, and you block it with the center section, and then you parry it upwards, but you follow through, bring it around behind your back, and then you use your waist to kind of, this thing is going to now whip off your waist, right? Like a hula hoop. So you get extra momentum by bringing it around behind your back, whip it off your waist, swing it out, and you've got a 12-foot range on the guy. So even if they're running away, you still manage to smack them. The
Right.
3 section staff wasn't that bad. There's so many ways you can hold it and so many techniques that you can use. The only drawback is it takes a long time to figure it out. You got to play with this thing. And like I said, I played with it for 2 years. I'd take it up, I'd spin it this way, and I would, do the figure eight spin. I would do the spin behind the back, over the head while you're crouching down, over the head, crouching down behind the back. So
Yeah.
I got really good with spinning that thing and using it. I could extend it, unfold it with a flick of the wrist and unfold it, and with the same flick of the wrist, I could pull it back and it would fold up, and I could catch it in one hand. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of training.
Unwieldy, but it's one of the ones that has all those advantages.
Exactly. So but again, the drawback is, you'd have to play with it. So if we're sparring with guys and they say, "Oh, well, let me try the 3 section staff," go ahead,
You're like, go for it.
go for it. And
I'll take a knife and
everybody
see what
that's
you do
been
with
there before,
that.
everybody that's sitting around watching and that's used it before, start looking at each other and grinning. Let's watch this. This ought to be good. But actually, it's not a bad weapon overall. And again, better than a tonfa or a nunchuck and all that. Even better than the meteor hammer. So I liked it. It's a favorite of mine, but it's a favorite of mine only because it's so complex and so flashy. And I'm a pretty flashy guy, so I can whip this around and
Stylish, Stefan.
stylish.
Stylish.
Yes, it's fashion. It is our fashion to to play with the three-section staff, huh?
Ah,
Ah. Okay,
yeah, like
so now coming to the best weapons. Next up is double sticks, eskrima.
man,
Definitely
I love the practice of Eskrima.
me
I did it
too.
quite a while, and I would like to find some more people around here that would like to do it.
Yeah, no, I like the eskrima. Two sticks, double sticks, which would also be the same if it was double swords, right? Same techniques, double swords, same techniques as double sticks. Except the swords would have more. Well, you can thrust with the double sticks too, and it's very dangerous to thrust with those sticks. Um,
And in certain circles of the Philippines where they practice that, it was developed as a training version of their bolo machetes.
yeah, yeah,
So, in fact, it's supposed to be translatable to edged weapons.
yes,
And then also, the thing I love about stick fighting is it's you got a lot of other options. You could just grab any stick, right? Because you're practiced at it, or you can use something like a cane.
yes,
Uh, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
so it's already in your hand. It gets around most legal issues
Oh yeah,
where they're banning weapons and stuff.
yeah,
And it's just wildly effective.
yeah, yeah. So the practice you get using double sticks means that you can fight both handed. And it translates really the techniques translates to a longer stick or a shorter stick or one stick. So eskrima double sticks, top three weapons from martial arts in my opinion. Even
Very.
yeah, even slightly better than that is the long staff. So you've got all the benefits there. You got long range. You got you can block with it, and you can strike with it. But the most effective technique I found with the long staff is to use it like a spear technique in kung fu. So I use what's known as a northern style spear. In other words, the spear end is in my right hand, right? In southern styles, they use the spear head in the left hand. I don't know why. I'm right-handed, so I feel better. Well, actually, I could see it in the left hand because that's how I play pool, right?
Yeah, that's how I would probably instinctively do it. I'm messing around with my shillelagh here, trying to visualize this, and that's probably what I would do. But if you like it the other way, then you like it the other way.
Right. I like it the other way. So what I would do is I would hold it in 1/3 position. So my right hand is just inside the middle length of the staff. All right, it's just halfway towards me, and I would hold my right hand out in front with the staff, at about a 30-degree angle, 45-degree angle, and my left hand is at the bottom end of the staff. So now you've got this is spear technique. So maybe I shouldn't say staff. I should say spear because I use staff like a spear, and so this is like a spear technique. So they're basically interchangeable. But I don't use the staff like the Japanese use the staff. I find that fucking useless.
Really?
Yeah, where they hold it, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, right? And then they kind of, it's almost like, a double paddle in a kayak, right?
Yeah.
And I
I
found
mean, I
that
want to have the range,
I want to
but
have the range. Yeah.
yeah,
So instead, with a Chinese spear, your right hand holds it, just about a foot towards you from halfway of the length of the staff. Your left hand is way at the bottom of the staff, and you bring it back and you kind of hold it back towards you. So now you've got basically a 3-foot stick in front of you, and you use it like a 3-foot stick, right? You get a little bit more leverage by using your left hand to give you a little bit more snap to your strikes. There's a way to strike with the staff that way, where you would hit them, and it's like doing a strike with a katana, right? When you strike with a katana, your left hand, as you're striking, pulls up as your right hand pushes down. So you get a lever action to the sword combined with your whole body weight behind the sword, then that lever action gives it extra speed. The same way you would use a katana, you can use a staff, and it gives you a lot more power. So when you're striking somebody, you're not just using your right arm to push down and your body weight to push down on it. You're also using your left hand to pull up on it so that it levers it in your lead
Right.
hand and you get extra speed. So
You
that
get a
worked,
push pull.
yes, and more power too. So that worked really good. But the best technique is a thrust. And again, the same type of technique as with the meteor hammer, that when you're ready to do the thrust, your left hand comes towards your right hand. And they might even meet so that you're holding the staff by the bottom 8 inches of the staff at the end of your strike. You point the tip of the staff, you point it towards your opponent, and if they start to move in on you, and again, it's deceptive because it's coming straight at you. You have a slightly better chance of blocking it than with a meteor hammer because you at least can block part of the shaft of the staff, whereas the meteor hammer, you're just hitting the rope and that's not going to stop it. Anyways,
Sure.
and but you thrust it forward and your left hand, it's just like shooting pool, except you go all the way through, right? And because it's linear, it's coming straight at you, again, just like a jab, you've got now 6 feet plus 2 feet for your arms. You've got a 12-foot range. People, they're standing, 8 feet away from you. They don't think that you can hit them, and you can't if you were to use the staff like the Japanese method. Of course, you're going to be way too short to hit them. But if you do like a sliding step towards them, right, close the distance even further, foot and a half, and you thrust with your left hand. You got the stick
Right.
slides through the fingers of your right hand, and you aim it at their throat, their face, their stomach. 9 times out of 10, you will hit them with that.
Yeah,
So,
I had a teacher that taught us. I was doing Tai Chi Chuan, and he also did Aikido and Bagua and Xing Yi. And yeah, he brought the stabs out, and they were Joe stabs, and so that's like up to your armpit ish,
yeah,
give or take,
yeah,
right? And that was exactly how he did his thrust, and he did almost like a shoulder strike kind of a thing.
yep,
Something like it was like a shoulder strike, but then if you have that staff in your hand, you do a push pull kind of crisscross, and you can still hit with the staff
yeah,
like that in a really unexpected manner.
yes, yes. Very unexpected. Which brings me to what I think is the top weapon, and that is the Joe. I like it because, again, it's like a walking stick. It doesn't look offensive. I
Yes,
personally tell people
it
if you
could be a
want to carry a
crutch.
weapon in the streets, carry a cane. It's a fantastic weapon. That's what I taught to my blind students. She was able to use a cane to great effect. She did the figure eight with it, and then using it in two hands, she could clothesline you. She could, if you were to do grappling techniques on her, you go ahead and do a front choke on her, and she's got a cane. You're dead because she'll
Yeah,
whip that cane up over your arms, grab it with two hands, thrust forward, and it will follow the line of your arms right up into your throat. That's why you can do it even when you're blind. You don't have to see your target. And, come up behind her in a bear hug, and she's got that cane. What I taught her was do a slight side step, bring that cane up behind you, between the guy's leg, grab the end with your other hand, and just do a circular motion and rip his balls right off.
sure.
It worked really great. But the Joe, a 4 foot staff, ended up being what I think is the best because first of all, it's like a katana, so it translates perfectly to a katana. Also, it's a little bit faster than a bow, 6 foot staff. It's just a little bit faster because the bow you still got a little bit more mass to move, and it has to traverse a greater distance when you're striking. Whereas the Joe, it's a little bit faster. And again, using that technique of sliding it through your lead hand, you still get a 6 foot range out of a Joe. And the other thing is, you can use it in a backhand technique as well. So if you're using it like a walking stick, you're holding it in your right hand, your thumb is up, the Joe is, in your fist pointing down, but you bring your forearm across your chest and you hit him with that end of the Joe, right?
Yeah.
Works very fast. It's very fast. People don't see it coming because it looks like it's beside you, and then you just quickly, and it'll hit you up the side of the head really quick. And if you miss, you just follow through, allow it to whip around, change direction, and hit him from the other direction.
Yeah.
And then using it by holding it with both hands. The thing with the Joe is sometimes with the bow, sometimes people would try and grab the end of it. Now you can get out of it. If they grab the end of it, you got to do a little circle and do a kind of a wrist lock release on who's ever grabbing your bow. But you'll probably be playing tug of war with your opponent for about 20 seconds. With the Joe, they grab the end of it, and because it's so short and you got a better leverage on it, you can pull it out, you can whip it around, and strike them with it a lot faster than with the bow. So the Joe then would be my top weapon, followed very closely by the long staff or the bow, followed very closely by double sticks. So that's what I found of 2 years. Were my opinion after 2 years, full contact, free form, no rules, sparring with martial arts weapons.
I like it. And one of the things I like to point out, if anyone's listening, uh, a lot of people think, well, who's walking around with this stuff? Well, as you already said, you could be using a cane. People use canes all the time. You have mob sticks, you have, all sorts of, just sticks around. So it's no coincidence that your top three are basically sticks.
That's right. Yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff around like that. And then I also like to do HEMA martial arts and stuff where you're fighting with daggers and swords. And it's like, well, you drew the same parallel with using a katana sword. So if somebody uses kendo, why wouldn't they be able to pick up a stick
Exactly.
and use the stick in pretty much the same manner?
Yeah.
And as you said, it's fun. And if it's fun and you're going to go have a lot of fun doing it, you'll get good at it quick because you're going to do it a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I've got lots of plenty of knives that design wise resemble traditional martial arts type weapons. So if you're using them in a way that most people are thinking, well, who's walking around with swords or daggers or things with double quillion guards? I'm like, well, plenty of people.
Yeah.
That's all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll send you some video too with some visual aids. You see people, why would you learn a karambit in the Kali and Eskrima martial arts? Well, they're all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why not learn how to use against it? There's plenty.
Yeah.
And those design features are there for a reason. You can parry, you can, do all of that. And it's just fun. And it makes warriors out of people. And as we said earlier, there's plenty of psychopaths. We need people to know how to defend themselves,
Yeah. And again, you could pick up a broomstick or something, like in an emergency
Those
situation.
paint, like extension poles for painting that they sell at like
Yeah.
Home Depot. They have
Yeah.
them for $3. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's a Joe staff right
Yep.
there.
That is. Yep. That is.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, it
So,
was a great conversation. I've enjoyed it.
yeah, it was great.
I always like talking about weapons. We should talk about some, everyone who knows me knows I have a particular fondness for edged weapons, for knives and stuff.
Yeah.
I've got literally hundreds of them. And so some point we'll have to go ahead and have some conversations about those.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're on. I have a fondness for sticks, so I'm not a big fan of edged weapons because I can restrain you using a stick weapon like a Joe or a bow or Eskimo sticks. Restraining you with a knife probably means I'm going to have to cut you pretty badly.
Yes, my love for them is just a sincere fondness. It's not
Yeah.
out of the effectiveness of it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
the sticks and stuff. One of my favorite tools that I take with me every time I'm in the wilderness is a 5 foot blowgun,
Oh yeah. Okay.
and it's very stout, and I could completely use that as a staff. I wouldn't be able to use it as a blowgun afterwards,
Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's there's plenty of field expedient reasons to know how to fight with stick-like weapons.
Yes.
So
And
go
again,
find an Eskrima school or something and get on it, guys, because it's fun.
yeah, it's fun and it works. And again, like I tell people, the best weapon is a cane because if you're walking down the street and somebody jumps you out of the dark alley, are you going to be able to reach into your concealed carry holster in your belt under your jacket and pull that thing out and flick the safety off and shoot the guy? He's already on top of you. But if you're already holding a cane in your hand,
In your hand. It's
then
right there.
it's right there. And that's a question. One of my friends, he's instructor, used to be the team captain for the SWAT team here in Toronto. And then after he retired from the SWAT team because he ended up having to shoot a few people, and then he couldn't take it anymore. He had a nervous breakdown from killing people. So he went. They put him into the police academy to teach, and he says, you know what question I get all the time? I said, no, I don't know what question do you get all the time. He says, they always ask me, what's the best weapon? Is it a 9 millimeter Beretta, or should I go for a 45, 911, or what is the best weapon, teacher? And Jim is his name, and he says the best weapon is the one you have in your hand.
Yes. The little weapon or melee weapon you brought with you is better than that big gun you left at home, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's
And
why.
a person could take it from you, from your friend. They could also take it from me, in that I've had training for executive protection, and I've done a detail, and I've worked for bail bonds and things like that in Vegas. And you know, I mean, even right now in jujitsu, I've taken. We practice jujitsu with my sidearm in a holster, but with a training version of it, right?
Right.
And there's so much risk of somebody grabbing that thing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have to modify my jujitsu for the fact that I'm carrying,
Yeah.
and it's mark my words, that thing is there for the time that somebody's blasting away with a shotgun and I need to get him at a distance.
Right.
And it's concealed because I want to control whether or not I'm involved in this situation. It
Yeah.
is not there for the time somebody's just puffing their chest or bar fights or anything like that where I need to do anything other than kill a person.
Yeah.
Like, it's got one purpose,
Yeah.
and we shouldn't need that. I mean, we might, but we shouldn't. You know, that stick is going to be far more useful. You could literally just wave it around and keep a person away from you, 5 feet away from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I taught the blind woman to do. She would just whip that around in a figure 8 pattern, and she would use her hearing to figure out where you are in the room. And man, she would chase me around the dojo with this thing, whipping it around. And I had to run because it was a real cane, and she would not be able to control it. She wouldn't stop it if she thought she was going to hit me because she couldn't tell she was going to hit me. So she was like
Yeah.
a loose cannon with this cane, chasing after me in the dojo with this thing whipping around.
Yeah. One thing I noticed is after I read your book, it was Blind Zen is a book that Stefan has that is a case study in him teaching a blind woman kung fu. And one thing I noticed is it seemed like if I was on the aggression, we did a lot blindfolded, and it's like you can find your opponent.
That's right. Yeah.
It's the question is can you do all the Zatoichi or Daredevil
Yeah.
or
Well,
whatever? You can't do that.
no, you can't do
You
that.
can't see it coming.
No, it can't be
But you can find your
Zatoichi.
opponent, and you can be on the aggression. So even if you've got disabilities and stuff, like, get to the class, man. We a million hundred, there's millions of people out there that love doing this stuff, and we love teaching it too.
Yeah. So that's the story of weapons, Travis, thanks for having me on, and thanks
All
for the
right.
chat. And we'll talk again soon, then, eh?
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having the conversation, and I'll let you get back to saving the free world or what's left of it.
Yeah,
So
I'm working
I'll
hard on
talk
it.
to you later. All
Okay.
right. We
Thanks,
both are.
Travis.